Pregame.com.
Welcome back on pregame.com. I'm Pauly Howard. That's Teddy Covers. Week 15 in the NFL. Big matchup. Niners at the Seahawks. Weird scheduling spot. Second game in 18 days. They played on Thanksgiving. Niners favored by 1. Now they go on the road. They're getting 10.
Yeah, and the Niners took a ton of money in that first matchup, Pauly. We saw San Francisco pick them -1 open. They closed as high as 2.5 in some places. So San Fran took the money. Obviously, they were wiped out on their home field, 19-3 by Seattle. But to see, basically, we're talking about 11 or 12 points worth of line differential in a 3-week span. It's not based on injuries either. It's not like San Fran has gotten significantly less healthy than they were. But right now, the betting market's not showing a lot of respect for the 49ers. And a lot of it has to do with what's going on off the field, not so much what's going on the field.
You said a couple weeks ago the offense is broken. It's been that way for much of the season. The issues in the locker room, you're right. Harbaugh's out the door. He doesn't get along with Balky, the GM. You have the owner apologizing after the performance with a tweet on Thanksgiving. Then the daughter of the GM sends out a tweet ripping Roman, the offensive coordinator. They got to apologize for that. Is it Kaepernick's fault? He's regressed. Is it Harbaugh out the door, the distraction there? Is it the play calling with Roman? What's the problem? It's a mess right now.
And the answer is all of the above. And I would put my finger, if I'm pointing fingers, and you got to point fingers, that's what we do. If we're looking to identify the problem for San Francisco, I think it's Greg Roman. And I cannot fathom what Roman is thinking. Roman was a great offensive coordinator. He was a great offensive coordinator at Stanford. He was a great offensive coordinator for San Francisco for 3 years, getting that team to the title game in each of the 3 years, getting them to the Super Bowl once. And this year, it seems to me like he's gone off the rails. San Fran had an identity. They're a run-first team. This year, Frank Gore and Carlos Hyde barely have 1,000 yards between them. Colin Kaepernick's thrown over 400 passes attempts. That duo, less than 300 rushing attempts between them. So the run-pass ratio has been wrong. They haven't been getting good production from the run game.
He's abandoned the pistol.
Completely. And this is Kaepernick's strength. What we've seen from Kaepernick this year is zero development compared to where he was last year. And especially for a young quarterback, the better QBs are going to get better one year after the next. We haven't seen any improvement from Kaepernick this year. We've seen regression, and that's not a good sign moving forward for San Francisco.
Sherman has always talked about when we get a healthy Chancellor and a healthy Wagner, watch out, and the defense will play like the team that won the Super Bowl. Well, that's what's happened. They've outscored their opponents 62-20 the last 3 weeks, Arizona, San Francisco, and then the win against the Eagles. 140 yards against the Eagles. They dominated the game.
I know. I had Philly in that game, and I lost big, and my clients lost big, unfortunately, on that contest because I read that handicap completely wrong. And my biggest concern for Seattle going into that game was their defensive depth. You talked about a couple of guys coming back, but let's face it, the Seahawks' defensive depth on the line and in the secondary is not even close to what it was for their Super Bowl team last year when it comes to injuries, when it comes to the losses that they suffered in the offseason. So when I projected it, the matchup against Philadelphia, I thought, man, Philly's going to run this super fast pace. They're going to force that defense to stay on the field, and that defense is going to wear down, and the Eagles are going to get some big play touchdowns. Obviously, I couldn't have been more wrong in terms of that handicap. What happened was the Seahawks were able to shut down Mark Sanchez. Philly's receivers could not get open against the Seahawks receivers, much like the 49ers receivers have been unable to get open against Seattle's secondary. And Russell Wilson and the offense were able to just churn out these long drives, convert on third down, and keep the Eagles' offense off the field. And that same strategy should work here against San Francisco. When we look at the Seahawks defense in recent weeks, over the last 4 weeks, they have allowed an average of less than 48 plays against them per game. That means they're forcing 3 and outs. Their offense is controlling the clock and keeping that defense off the field. The NFL average in the range of about 63, 64 plays per game. So they're taking essentially a 4-quarter game and turning it into a 3-quarter game just on pace alone. They're slowing it down, and that's preventing the defense from wearing down despite the lack of depth.
That is a great move by Carroll. What are you doing with this game?
Well, it's a tough one. You look at the recent meetings between these two teams, 19-3, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where San Fran had 204 total yards. In the playoffs last year, the Niners got to 17 in that game, 308 yards. The regular season last year, the game that San Fran won, they had 19 points, 318 yards. They had 3 points in 2013 when they met, or 2012, I should say, when they met, and 207 yards, and 13 points and 313 yards. So we're talking about the last 5 meetings. They haven't gained more than 318 yards or scored more than 19 points against the Seahawks defense. I'm not going to project that to be any different this time around. I think the 49ers offense is going to continue to struggle. The question, of course, is now, with a line value perspective, boy, you got to lay a tax here with Seattle. They got to win by more than 10 with the current number at 10. For me, at this number, it's a clear pass. An interesting game to discuss, Paul, but not one that I'm going to plan on having a wager on.
Great job, Teddy. And one more thing, we can close on this. I think San Francisco, obviously, pot committed. They're all in with Kaepernick. Harbaugh's gone. Looks like Roman could be out the door. Why not go get Chris Alt, who invented the pistol? He's doing some work with Kansas City. Hire him as your offensive coordinator if Kaepernick's going to be your franchise quarterback. We'll see you next time on pregame.com.